Hey, good afternoon, football team. Coach Myers here to discuss nutrition recommendations specifically for your pre workout and your post workout sessions during the off season. Coach Combo asked me to discuss with you exactly that. What should you be eating before your workouts and what should you be eating after your workouts in regards to nutrients, as well as the timing of both. And what I prepared here for you is a slide that discusses before workout, after workout, and then some of my recommendations to kind of break it down further and help try and simplify it for you. Because the reality is, cross country is pretty easy. Get your hydration in and get your carbohydrate in. Make sure you do eat your protein. You do need it. With the weightlifters, make sure you put that emphasis on protein, but don't forget about the carbohydrate. Their sports are different. One's primarily focused on running, the other one's primarily focused on lifting weights. Your sport involves a mixture of all of that. There's running, there's sprinting, there's jumping. You need to be strong, you need to be powerful, and there's a lot more that goes into your sport and training for your sport than the cross country team as well as the weightlifting team. Not to say that yours is any harder, not trying to dismiss the cross country team or the weightlifting team. It's just there's a lot more components for you guys to think about. But at the same time, the complexity of your sport lends itself to probably a more simpler nutrition concept and making sure that you're just getting these things well rounded and you're going to be okay. So I have prepared this slide for you here, but the same thing that I did for the cross country team and the weightlifting team is I wanted to make sure that I recorded this video and had as much of an interpersonal conversation with you as I possibly could to discuss these nutrition recommendations for you. With that, we'll get into it. So the before workout, specifically the timing. This one here, when it comes to the people, the literature, different people say different things, but they all really kind of say the same thing. There are, essentially it comes down to a 1 to 4 hour window. Some people will say it's a 3 to 4 hour window that you want to make sure that you're getting that food in so that way you can digest it, get some nutrient uptake in before you go exercise. Some people say as little as 1 hour. My recommendation for you is going to be figure out what works for you. So some people, they may be able to eat all the carbohydrate and protein they need before going out and doing very strenuous exercise / training session. And that's great. But there's some people that can't eat that close in. They need to eat out. They need to eat out further. And there's some people that eat further. Once they get close in, they're going to be hungry. So essentially, my recommendation for you is to focus on that 1 to 4 hour window before actually going into a training session and making sure that you hit the nutrient recommendations before you go based off what works best for you. But one thing that I ask you to not ignore are going to be the actual nutrition recommendations. These things are pretty solid. So what the literature suggests is that you need to aim for 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrate and 20 grams of lean protein before going into a strenuous training session, workout, whether it's running, lifting, football drills, whatever it is. So with that, there are a lot of good ways of going about that. Sports bars, the Cliff bars, Cliff protein bars, there's a whole lot of them out there that do have good carbohydrate sources mixed with protein. What I do want to make sure that you understand is that the focus needs to be on carbohydrate with a low glycemic index. So if you do, the references to the literature where all these recommendations are pulled from is going to be placed at the end of this slideshow. If you want to go back in and you want to actually get into the science, I encourage you to do that. That's kind of my jam. I enjoy doing it, but if you don't, it's all right here. But in regards to, I reference the literature in regards to the glycemic index. So foods that have a low glycemic index are going to be your whole grain sources of carbohydrates, oats, quinoa, whole wheat bread, things like that. What those are going to be able to do, those whole grains, when you get into the science at a molecular level, they're much more dense and they take longer to break down. And what that ultimately translates into, it's going to be a more steady stream of energy that's going to be provided you throughout your training session. That's the benefit of the whole grains and the foods with the low glycemic index. Whereas if you get them with a high glycemic index, that molecular density is much shorter, and so you are still getting energy put into the system to be able to perform the work that you need to do. You burn through it a lot quicker. So make sure that carbohydrate source is coming from that whole grain source, and you won't have any issues being able to power through. What I will say though is just don't skimp on the carbohydrates. Please place that priority on those whole grains, but at the end of the day, if you're in a pinch, you're behind schedule, whatever it is, some sort of carbohydrate will do. Focus on the whole grains, but make sure you get those carbohydrates. And the same thing that I told the weightlifting team in regards to protein uptake, I recommend that protein before you actually go work out. Make sure that you put it on board. You have a steady stream of protein in the bloodstream, working metabolically there, so that way none of the protein that you do currently have on board, if it's a hard energy session, starts getting robbed from you metabolically and starts getting used for energy once you're out of carbohydrate. So you want to make sure that that protein is being used to build muscle, help make you stronger, faster, more powerful, and isn't being taken and put into energy production. After workout, this gets a little scientific. The 1 to 1.5 grams of carbohydrate per pound of body weight, and again, that same recommendation of that 20 grams to help stimulate that muscle protein synthesis. Getting a little scientific here, have to do some calculations and everything. But if you still aim for that 20 to 300 grams that you did before your workout, and you get that after your workout, you're gonna be able to get done what you need to get done. Same thing with protein. You don't need to go overboard on the protein. I talked about this with the weightlifting team. As long as you get that 20 grams in, you'll be able to stimulate that muscle protein synthesis and be able to start building muscle right after your workout, and that will be sustained for a prolonged period of time to help keep you going. Now, going into the complexity of your sport, there's going to be some days that you're going to be sprinting, there's going to be some days that you're going to be lifting, you're going to be jumping, plyometrics, all sorts of stuff across the array of exercise to prepare yourself for the sport. What I want to ask you to do is keep it simple. So it doesn't matter if you're going to be strength training that day, or if you're going to be sprinting or plyometrics or whatever it is that day, try and get yourself in the routine to do the same thing every day before workout and post workout. If you're able to do that, you'll be able to really nail down your total global nutrition intake. And when I say global, you have your daily recommended intake. But with you guys, it'll probably be the recommended intake will probably shift a little bit based off what you're doing. It'd be like a higher carbohydrate requirement one day for your sprint workouts and plyometrics, and maybe a little bit lower when you're doing the weightlifting workouts, so on and so forth. But if you focus on doing the same thing every single day, you'll be able to hit that global recommendation. You take the daily and expand it out over a week, month, year. If you're doing the same thing every day, you'll hit those global daily requirements, and you'll have all the nutrients that you need on board. And again, like mentioned, sports bars are a great option. Depending on the sports bar, some of them can be tricky. Some of them are loaded with sugars. You're going to have to do the work. I'm sorry. You can reach out to me. I'll provide my email at the end of this PowerPoint, so you can ask me any questions that you want to ask, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with you and get into it. But not all these sports bars are created equal. So be careful with that. And again, make sure that you're doing the same thing every single day according to these recommendations, and you're going to get the nutrients to be able to power through and be able to get better, improve your strength, improve your speed, improve your power, and be a better football player. And that's what it's all about. If you have any questions, like I said, I'll have my email at the end of this PowerPoint slide, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Have a good one.